Back when almost all SideQuest games were free, we probably wouldn't have considered reviewing any of them. Generally, when a game is free, the risk to customers is so low that it doesn't warrant the time to write the review. This is the only reason I haven't officially given Echo VR its much-deserved 9.5. There is also a sliding scale of expectation on the SideQuest platform, with games being excused for a general lack of polish because they are just SideQuest games. Now, however, there are paid titles on SideQuest, retailing at prices close to those found for budget titles on the official store. If you pay $15 for a game, your expectations will likely be uniform, regardless of whether you purchased your game from Steam, Oculus, or SideQuest. To that end, we've taken a look at some of the top-rated paid games available on the SideQuest platform to see if there is a reason they didn't land on the official Oculus store, and to see if they're worth your hard-earned money. To the top is a first-person platformer which sees the player bounding, climbing, and otherwise traversing impossibly vertical courses in a race to the finish line. Although it shares some broad similarities with games like The Climb and even Sprint Vector, there really isn't anything quite like it on the Quest. It can take a little while to get the hang of the movement system, but once you find that all-important flow state, the game becomes frighteningly addictive. Essentially, the movement system is a fancy VR version of Leapfrog. Both hands are used to grab a surface, you look in the direction you wish to travel and propel yourself with both hands. Simple. With the exception that you can only use particular objects to propel yourself. Failing to make it to the next assigned piece of the level will either see you stopping in your tracks or falling to your death and restarting from the last checkpoint. The real challenge of To the Top, the core loop that keeps you coming back, is in the game's inherent rhythm. Each consecutively well-timed leap will increase your acceleration and fling you further through the course. Add to this the fact that the levels are both abundant and ridiculously well-designed, and you have a game which might not grab your attention in the first 30 minutes, but with a little perseverance will soon enough rob you of no small amount of your time. Given that I generally found this to be an excellent game, is it completely shocking to me that this doesn't have its place in the store? Perhaps part of me could see why there may have been some reason to doubt this game in the earliest iterations of the Quest storefront. For starters, based on the locomotion system alone, this is not one for beginners. Making games accessible for entry-level users was paramount, so I can see why this potentially nauseating title might have been a cause for alarm. Also, even though I genuinely enjoyed To the Top, it does lack a bit of polish around the graphics, UI, and tutorial, all of which left me with a relatively underwhelming first impression. The graphics have a rather basic aesthetic, which grows richer and more evocative as the game progresses. Still, initially the backgrounds are relatively flat and dull. Overall, I'm glad that I played this for a review. Otherwise, I might not have persevered long enough to appreciate what a well-conceived and well-executed concept it had laying at its heart. There are currently thousands of Quest owners all out there enviously looking at Blade and Sorcery, wondering when will it come to Quest. The answer is, sadly, probably never. But don't let that worry you too much, because Virtual Age are working hard on bringing you Gladius, the Quest's first physics-based melee hack and slasher. For fans of the genre, there's some good stuff to look forward to here. From a narrative point of view, Gladius is a straightforward concept. The player is a captured soldier, now a slave, who has been given a chance to earn freedom through glorious battle in the arena. Cue Russell Crowe's hand moving gently over a wheat field. After a brief chat with your new coach/master, you are treated to a short tutorial that runs you through all the basics. Holstering your weapons, dismembering your enemies, slowing down time. After that, it's off to the arena for a healthy portion of death and glory. Make no mistake, Gladius is not Blade and Sorcery. It doesn't manage the same level of ragdoll physics, it doesn't have cool spells to throw around, and the arenas are far less involved. Other than that, Gladius is a perfectly acceptable combat sim with some nice touches and solid gameplay elements that will no doubt make it popular. That is, once they iron out the kinks. As it stands now, Gladius is very much an early access title. In buying it, you are effectively investing in the game that it will become, rather than outright purchasing a finished product. There are some major graphical glitches, holstering weapons on your back is clunky to say the best, and I did have a couple of crashes. Still, overall there is a lot of potential here. Given the excellent work already here, if you're the type of person who enjoys a bit of casual stabby, you will probably find plenty of fun. However, Gladius is still a few updates away from being ready for the big time. Gladius is a game that most definitely belongs on the Oculus storefront. Just not yet. It's a virtual cake that once baked will make a lot of people happy, but at the moment it's still a bit raw and doughy. Also, I want cake. Crazy Kung Fu is essentially a martial arts training companion as much as it is a game. Having never mastered a martial art other than holding a yellow belt in Google Fu, I can't really speak to how well this game has prepared me as a Kung Fu master. What I can speak to is the fact that I had a lot of fun trying. There's a very simple mechanic at play in Crazy Kung Fu. There's a pole in front of you. It holds an increasing amount of rings that see different objects come swinging out at you, alternating directions as you go. Depending on the item, you either need to punch, dodge, or block, aiming for the precision of form and timing required to increase your score. And that's pretty much it. There's also a Wing Chun training dummy to play around with, but there isn't much else going on from a pure gaming perspective. Now that might sound like a criticism, but it's really not meant to be. If this game were launched on the official store, it would be slated for its lack of content. It is, after all, essentially a mini-game that you would expect to form part of a more extensive gameplay experience. But, as a fairly cheap experience on SideQuest, it is really, really fun. I spent a couple of hours on Crazy Kung Fu without even realizing it, caught in a just one more try cycle that unconsciously ate my time. My only real criticism is that the difficulty curve spiked too quickly. Either that or the tutorial didn't focus enough on teaching the correct timing techniques needed to jackpot your score. In the end, I stopped playing when I got stuck on an early level because I was unable to reach the required score despite hitting all the objects. The reality is, if I had been able to keep progressing through a gradual incline in difficulty, I would probably still be playing it right now. In all honesty, Crazy Kung Fu isn't really a game that I think should be on the official Quest store. It doesn't offer enough to fulfill Oculus's requirements for polish and content. An official release would just result in disappointment and poor reviews, but that absolutely does not mean that you shouldn't buy it. To me, this game is a brilliant example of where paid content on SideQuest has merit. It would have failed with an official launch, but as it is, Crazy Kung Fu offers a simple, engaging, and thoroughly enjoyable experience that is well worth taking the time to look at. Operation Serpens is a shooter. As far as games fitting squarely into a single genre go, Serpens is the prime example. There's no tricky movement, no stealth elements or tactical maneuvers. You just stand in place and, shoot. Enemies will come at you from down corridors, surround you in open spaces, or even charge at you from the back of trucks in some action movie-style set pieces. Still, at the end of the day, all you need to do is shoot enough of them, and the level's done. There are mild elements of games like Pistol Whip. Bullets come at you at a pace that you can dodge or sidestep, and it could occasionally even tread close to the bullet hell genre as the amount of enemy fire increases. However, the damage is not nearly enough to motivate you to split your attention between shooting and dodging. If enemy bullets were a little more threatening, this would have added some much needed tension to the gameplay. There are currently 7 levels in the campaign mode, and a horde mode that oddly features zombies that can also use guns. Each level has its own unique setting and boss to defeat, but despite attempting to give each a different flavor, they all end up just a little vanilla. Similarly, the Horde mode is fun, but hardly groundbreaking. The necessity to dodge bullets while keeping an eye out for crawling zombies is a nice twist, but it's not enough to keep you coming back. Operation Serpens has gone for a blocky, cartoonish visual style which fits the gameplay nicely. The whole experience really feels like it's a nod towards the idea of going inside the arcade machines of the 90s without getting bogged down in the specific pop culture references of games like Pixel Ripped. It's not exceptional, but it works. The sound design, however, is a bit disappointing. It still needs a lot of work to round out the experience and ensure a continuity of quality. The gunshots lack the oomph required to be satisfying to use, and the spatial cues are a bit muddy and get lost in the overall audio environment. The voice acting isn't terrible, but the recording quality is pretty poor. Those of you familiar with my past reviews will realize that there's a touch of cheekiness here, but it does sound like the voice work was recorded on a setup similar to the kit that I used for my Star Wars Tales of the Galaxy's Edge video review. I really hate saying it, but in terms of gameplay, this just feels like a light gun game from the mid-90s. It's a bit better because it's in VR, but not by enough to justify its presence on the official store. Perhaps a better comparison would be, Operation Serpens is a game that would have been pretty cool in 2016, but in 2020 it just doesn't offer enough depth and variety to beat out the vast array of arcade wave shooters that already exist on the Quest. Of all the games that I've reviewed for this piece, Reflex Unit 2 is easily the most polished product in its graphics and UI. Unlike some of the other games, Reflex Unit 2 looks like a real game when you launch it. This makes it easy to wade into the gameplay with confidence about the experience to come. In fact, my first thoughts were of disbelief that this wasn't on the official store. That was, however, until I started to play it. Reflex Unit 2 is the VR version of a popular mobile game. That fact is unavoidable as you progress through the campaign. Played from a top-down perspective, Reflex Unit 2 starts you out as a soldier. It then quickly puts you inside a range of futuristic armored vehicles as you take out enemies and move towards each level's objectives. The player stands at the war table, which shows you a limited amount of the level environment, with a set of large screens above the playfield which display the map and the position of nearby enemy objectives. One controller handles movement and special abilities. The other controller handles the constant stream of gunfire that will see you through combat, with the control system operating in the same way that games like this usually operate on a mobile device. Initially, I found myself drawn in by the nice aesthetics and straightforward interface, and I enjoyed the first level, but I soon realized that this is not a game that needs to be in VR. After about 30 minutes, I realized that I was playing the type of game that I might play for a few minutes on my phone to kill some time on my commute. However, Reflex Unit 2 was not something that I would ever deliberately put my headset on to play, and as I continued through the game, I was painfully aware of this. I guess, if this is a style of game that you enjoy, or you're looking for one of those lazy games that you can just play on the Quest while sitting around on the couch, then this could have some merit for you. While the above reviews are all focused on paid content, make no mistake, SideQuest has some outstanding and innovative titles available for you to try absolutely free. For new initiates to the platform, we also recommend checking out Hyperdash, T for God, and Crisis Brigade. And if you're a musician, be sure to check out Virtuoso, which lets you make all kinds of music in VR. If you'd like to see a full review of any of the titles mentioned in this piece, or anything else currently appearing on SideQuest, leave a note in the comments. If you're enjoying the channel and would like to stay up to date with all of our latest reviews and content, hit the subscribe button now. And don't forget, every time you like this video, an indie dev gets his wings.